welcome back to the Dark Pixel Podcast. My name is Mike.
My name is Landon.
I'm Kason.
Today we are talking about Red Dead Redemption 2 being pushed back to 2018. I still don't understand that name. Why is it Red Dead Redemption 2?
Redeemed. The first one was redemption.
There's not enough.
Then redemption.
Redemption.
Redemption. Yeah. You got to keep reing the redemption.
As we'll talk about why I'm confused about the name in a minute, but the game's been delayed, which is not a surprise. Every game's delayed now. Okay, then we're going to talk about Fire Emblem Echoes DLC practices. This is...
There was a question on a previous podcast that was trying to get to this.
Yeah. We talked mostly about Zelda in that last podcast, but I think that this game is a better example of something we can get mad about.
Upset about, right? Yeah.
Okay, then we got users' suggested questions from Ermac. What draws you more, JRPGs or WRPGs, and why? Okrax, what goes into a good remaster or remake? Paul Sampson, what do you guys think about multi-genre games incorporating RPG elements such as leveling up, equipment upgrades, in-game currency into their core gameplay? Most recent example, Injustice 2, with levels and equipment upgrades. That's a fighting game with leveling up in it. Which core gameplay elements make a game an RPG? That's from Josh.
So you guys like RPGs or something?
Dang.
The heck?
Yeah, what's all this love for JRPGs about? Where's all of our freaking
FPS fans?
life simulator fans?
Life sims.
Actually, that fits pretty well in the
It
RPGs
does.
too.
That's some good overlap.
Those are our puzzle game fans. Puzzle Dragon people.
Puzzle Dragon, man. Still RPG elements.
That's true, actually. Every game is RPG now.
Red Dead Redemption 2 delayed spring 2018. Seems like no one's very surprised across the internet because there's been nothing about this game.
Yeah, they've not said much about it.
Now, this is
Which is weird though, because they only let us know that the game was being developed in the first place very recently.
Yeah.
And it's already being delayed.
Like the day...
It's like, what? You guys didn't know back in October that maybe there was going to be some issues?
Was that the day or the week of the Switch reveal?
The Switch reveal.
Same day?
The Switch, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was the same day.
Just kind of crazy.
In
or
late
the day
October,
after.
right?
Last week of October there. Now, so this is about a month out from E3. You think that we're definitely going to see a lot of this at E3.
Yeah.
So,
or they're letting us know, hey, maybe you
won't see any of this. Well, they
That's
did
why
show some
right before
screenshots,
E3,
right?
they're like, oh, it's being delayed.
No one's seen gameplay footage yet.
No, and of course the screenshots likely isn't what the final game will look like, and we all need to freaking learn that because it usually is the case. They're pre-rendered.
So I would be tempted to agree with you, except for the fact that what Horizon Zero Dawn accomplished, just like visually, it seems not so far out of line. With the screenshots they released yesterday.
Yeah, this is like Horizon Zero Dawn level graphics, but with better atmospherics and dust and all that stuff.
The one with the hands holding the revolvers. That's totally real looking skin.
Yeah,
holy
completely.
Crap, that's amazing looking. So
if Horizon Zero Dawn did good hair, then Red Dead can do good skin.
if it were a console exclusive game, I would believe a little bit more that it could look that good in final form. Because that tends to be true of games that are exclusive to one platform. They go all out on it. They're optimized for it. But since it's not, I'm just going to...
Then they typically show you
I'm going to go ahead
PC
and say that it's probably going to take a little bit of a hit.
Yeah, but it does look very nice.
Well, okay, so they've said something to consider. I don't know specifically... the specifics about the game engine or anything, but they're saying this is their first game developed from the ground up for next gen. Like, this is Rockstar's first game designed specifically for next gen.
Right.
Okay.
Grand Theft Auto 5 was straddling the line.
Right.
But that's crazy to think that we're already talking about the PlayStation 5 and crap. Like, people are talking about that, the Scorpio or whatever, and this is...
Rockstar's barely getting going.
Beginning of next year will be Rockstar's first game designed for...
And if the rumors are to be believed that some weird PS5 something or other could be unveiled this year, then freaking Rockstar. I don't know, dude.
It's gonna get so bad. Like development times are gonna get so long. You're gonna miss whole console cycles.
Totally, and that's what's happening, and that's what I think is unacceptable. That's when it's like, hey, this is taking too long now.
It's just too complicated, man. Game design is too huge.
I'm all
and
for
that
like,
is what happened. All these open world big games
Yeah.
that are coming out specifically this generation are all being delayed like crazy, like many years back. And there's something with the scale of what they're trying to do that's like you guys are doing a little too much. Even Breath of the Wild, it was like they just couldn't do what they were trying to do.
The team for this is it the exact same team from Red Dead Redemption? Because that game came out so
11, right? Or
I don't know.
10 or 11?
I think it came out 2010.
2010.
Yeah, it was a long
mistaken.
time ago.
So 8 years later. Wow.
Yeah. So I would assume same group of people, but Rockstar hires and lays off. Like they're really flexible. But I just wonder like how long Red Dead Redemption 2 has been in serious development or not. You know, like did they take some of those people?
We still haven't seen any gameplay, right?
No.
So
I mean, we've seen things move
in a cutscene type.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But not like.
I don't know. All I know is I really, really, really loved the first game. I actually grew up.
The first Red Dead Redemption or Red Dead Revolver?
Sorry, the Red Dead. First Red Dead Redemption.
Red Dead Redemption 1.
I never liked Westerns. I grew up kind of just like really not liking Westerns as a genre. And I saw this game and I was like, it's a Western. Now I don't care. Then I don't know why. I was just into collecting games back then. I got it when it came out and it just defied any I guess disinterest I had in Westerns was it what's the word I'm looking for? It
absolved your concerns.
Absolved.
Yes, it did that, but it
converted you.
You go beyond
broadened your horizons.
Okay.
Transcended.
It transcends genre. It's just a really good story. And the characters are really, really great in it. And the dialogue is excellent. And so, like, I'm very excited about whatever they're doing next. I just am confused because that story came to an end. Like,
yeah.
I don't understand why it's Red Dead Redemption 2.
I'm confused though.
Someone else needs redemption this time.
I need to look at the screens closer,
Different
but
character, like who?
Yeah, I can't tell who or if they've singled out anybody in particular we can tell is like the main character yet.
I don't know. They've shown that you see like the 4 people on the horizon. Yeah, I don't know that you can tell quite yet.
I don't know, man. It might be a case of the marketing.
It's just
the marketing transcending the story in the sense that like the brand recognition.
It's just about brand recognition. It's got to be what it is. It's because like if they called it Red Dead something else, would that have the same
Red Dead Returns
virality, immediate recognition as Redemption would?
Or maybe because Red Dead Revolver, Red Dead Redemption, they ran out of words
to put
returns.
Returns.
You do have returns.
Rocks out.
No, it's got to be R-E. Red Dead
Receives
Revival. Actually, that
Red Dead Revival.
Actually, that would totally fit if we're talking about the same
I wouldn't
story.
Be too, sometimes games are under a working title, and this has like a logo design, so this probably isn't working.
This is likely the real one. It is weird because I think Red Dead is powerful enough. You don't need to keep Red Dead : Redemption. You don't need to keep that part of it. Red Dead, there's nothing like that.
Red Dead Resurgence.
Red Dead Resurgence.
Revengeance.
Remix.
Red Dead Remix.
Hell yeah.
Red Dead 1.5 remix. Or Remix 1.5.
I guess it could be worse, right? It could be worse.
It could be worse. Redemption 2 is not sounding so bad.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it is interesting, though.
Red Dead Returns.
Oh, my gosh.
That's kind of brings me to the question, because you talk about how Red Dead Redemption and story-wise it doesn't really make sense to have another Redemption. Sorry.
Well, the Western...
If you guys are watching this Rockstar, I'm sorry. It's just...
You can only go so far with... Like, if you're going to start stringing, like... I don't want to say too much, but if you're going to start stringing a timeline together, like the Wild West time period was only really
it's
long.
Like
so
40, 30 years.
Not that they won't allow themselves to be limited by that, but it is kind of, you start bumping up into like, I mean, they had machine guns and crap in the last one. But that was already starting to get right at the edge of you're getting out of the cool Wild West stuff and you're getting into the
World War I era.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if this is, I don't know.
Yeah, just so you guys are aware, if anyone's like feeling like we're coming down on the game, it just being silly, just joking. I mean, I'm sitting here splitting hairs about Red Dead Redemption 2, but I like a series called Final Fantasy that has 15 main games.
Final Fantasy.
It's called Final Fantasy.
It's the last fantasy, but it's the 15th last fantasy.
So it's not that big a deal.
The question is story-wise.
Yeah, what does it mean?
Because Final Fantasy is a different world each time, right? But then with this particular story, like what?
Yeah. I just don't like when they go with the numbering thing. Like, come up with a new name. Like, if they were numbering Zelda games like they number Final Fantasy,
Legend of Zelda 9
or something. It starts to feel weird. It's like phones. It's like we're getting to like the Samsung and Apple phones that are numbered a little too high.
Yeah. Once they get into the teens, it's like,
then you're like you gotta start over or something. Do something else. I just don't like it feels lazy to me. That's just it feels.
It does. You know. And it's the
know.
marketing team and the title design person saying, we're good.
I could just put a 2 on it.
We're good,
save so much money.
And they're like, yeah, we'll save some money and just
oh my gosh,
do it this way.
But this could very well end up being like the defining game of this generation for like PS4, Xbox One. You know what I mean? This could be.
Yeah.
I think this game holds a lot of promise.
What are the chances that they took a look at some of the recent Horizon Zero Dawn, Breath of the Wild, and decided,
they played them and they're like, we need to put towers in.
Some
we
of
forgot
this
the towers.
We made an open game world without the towers. What were we thinking? But I almost wonder if they want to implement some of those things in it, because those are the new genre-defining open world, games.
Yeah.
And if Red Dead is going to kind of continue with what the old genre of open world was before these new games came out, then it's like, okay, you might have to change some stuff.
As open world games go, though, I had a lot of fun messing around in Red Dead Redemption's world in a way that I didn't have fun messing around in like Skyrim's world. Skyrim was fun for exploration and figuring out trying to do all the Thieves Guild and the Dark Brotherhood and all that kind of stuff. Right. But like Red Dead Redemption was fun to just run around. Screw around, shoot stuff, look for whatever.
Ride on donkeys, trying to steal people's horses.
Exactly. It was fun in that sort of way. Kind of how Breath of the Wild can be fun in that way too. You just seeing what you can do. All the compilation videos people put up of like, because you could tie people up and like throw them over your shoulder.
Yes.
And then throw them down on train tracks.
We saw a lot of that
stuff.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, people were doing that all like crazy on like lasso the guy and like pick him up and run him like
and then take him and drop him in front of the train. Trying to chase the train down was pretty fun too, but I loved that, and I think that's hard to achieve a little bit, because.
So you think even if they're doing similar stuff to what they did in Red Dead Redemption, it would still fit post Breath of the Wild and all
it's been so long since I played that game. I would have to replay it to really say, but
it did seem pretty different from Skyrim, like in a lot of ways, which is cool.
Yeah.
But it was around the same time they came out. So
that's actually one of the few big open world games of the last decade that didn't feel samey to others. Like it felt really kind of unique to itself. I mean, it had certain aspects like the way it handled mini maps and waypoints, but like and the way it kind of like tracks your objectives and things like that. But there are no towers in it.
No towers. I like the towns.
I loved the towns, like going in there and doing all like the little mini games, like
playing cards,
gambling, or doing that game where you put the
five
fingers. That was
freaking
freaking sweet.
Well, they had those little like early movie things.
Yeah, those were so funny.
Yeah,
those were so funny. The women's suffrage one just freaking cracked.
I went and tried to watch like all those as quickly as I could. I was disappointed there were only like
there's only
5 of them that I can remember. I wanted more of those.
They were freaking funny. Yeah,
maybe that's what they're like. Oh, we gotta make more of these. Delay the game.
I also
more
liked
movies.
I also liked going into towns and like people recognizing you and that's a little Assassin's Creedy, and maybe for some people that's kind of samey right now.
Right.
But it did like
that's a thing that
it made it. I don't know. It made it so you had to figure out ways to. I've got to go here in this town, do something, but like these people all hate me.
Right.
I kind of like that. Where like again, I keep coming back to Skyrim, but it's because I played the crap out of it. But for the most part, you're just kind of go here, okay, find stuff to do. Go here, find stuff to do. There's not a lot of danger other than running into random Thalmor or whatever, right? That was just random. I liked in Red Dead. It was like in Red Dead Redemption. Yeah, I just remember going to. I can't remember the name of the swamp town.
Oh,
that's like the southern swampy biome.
I was just actually thinking about a shootout I did.
Yeah, because that's where it happened to me like all the time.
Yeah.
And you just have to get the freak out of there because somebody recognizes you or whatever.
Or a freaking like a cougar will come. Tackle you off your horse.
I know when I heard this, my first thought was like, I hope someone's recording with the inevitable like flying crow people or whatever that had to delay the game because
that was so fun. that was a game where the glitches were all just super fun. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't remember if there were any game breaking ones. I don't remember. But like anytime it did happen, it was the kind of game where it was like I enjoyed it when it happened, not like, oh, geez, this feels unfinished or whatever. You know,
well, it was like you wanted to record it.
Yeah, exactly. And the online stuff was just so much fun. That's the one game in which I have genuinely had like an amazing time every time I got online, and just like
the online is very. They did some really innovative things with online, specifically the way they dealt with like campers and snipers. And all of a sudden,
it would get dusty.
It gets dusty, and you just can't see. You just can't sit in one place and just wait there the whole time. You have to move around.
I'm so confused with what the objective even was. Like,
it's just get a better horse. For us, it was just trying to get a better horse, get a better horse, get a better horse. Because you start on those donkeys, you gotta get a horse. But except for that one guy who was hacked the game, and he was just standing like on top of the
spinning around,
spinning in circles, and just
headshotting everybody.
Everyone was just getting headshot. He's just spinning on the top of a barn, just like
a bot.
Bullets like flying out.
Does he do that like every day? He just comes out, logs on, he's just like
programmed almost,
and it just like happens.
Oh, he like does the code.
Well, yeah. Do you think he just has his bot constantly running? And it's just doing
I think
that?
some people do. I don't know, just to screw with people.
Why? That's so funny.
Oh crap! There's something else about that. Grand Theft Auto 5 online has apparently been really awesome for a lot of people, and so I wonder if maybe that's also a reason for the delay, that they're trying to integrate
an online thing.
Because you just Red Dead Redemption had it, but you kind of have to have that nowadays if you want your game to, I don't know, be at least from Rockstar's perspective with Grand Theft Auto, because that's sort of the direct parallel for this.
That's
something to live for years and years. If you have that online component like they've built for Grand Theft Auto 5, they're still releasing crap for that. So I wonder if they'll do that here, which would be way more interesting to me.
Yep, I am excited for it. Can't wait.
I can't wait to hear that it's delayed again.
It'll probably be holiday 2018,
and then it'll be a PS4, PS5.
Exactly, it'll do a release. Also, the PS5, that people have been rumoring that there might be a PS5 announced this year, right? But I feel like it's probably more likely that instead of a PS5 being announced by Sony this year, they're going to have their Vita successor.
Oh, totally. It's going to happen, people. People saying there will never be another Vita.
That's really dumb. The PSP sold like 80 million units. Like, they aren't, just because the next one didn't do well doesn't mean the first one didn't do well and that they won't do it again. Like, it's gonna happen, and they have to try and compete with the Switch, because that's what Sony does. Sony copies Nintendo and almost everything they do. So.
Sony copies everybody in all of their businesses. They're just sort of. I mean, but that's kind of a little bit of their heritage with what they developed. Like, they would take something that existed and they would just kind of make a better version of it. And then take advantage of the economies of scale, and they're just such a huge company.
Exactly, they're such a big company. Yeah. But Vita 2 is going to happen, and this, who knows, this might be on the Vita 2.
Vita 2 is true.
Or the PSP 3. People are calling it the PSP 3.
Because no one...
Very interesting. I could totally see Sony ditching the Vita name
the PSP 2,
to come back
PSP
to...
3.
Exactly. Yeah, in fact, even Square Enix had something. They said something recently where they mentioned PSP 3 in one of their, like...
Huh? Really?
Yeah, like marketing documents. And everyone missed it. This was from months ago.
This is going to be the PSP Go 3.
This is their... I don't know. But this is like their future plan for like 2018 and beyond kind of thing. And, you know, they mention like how they're going to hit the Switch hard. And everyone's like, yeah, Square Enix is doing the Switch stuff, right? But in like that same document, it said something about PSP 3, which is like...
Well...
What?
Square Enix,
Did you just drop a huge bomb? I don't know.
Sony will make something like the Switch, but it'll have the big old glowing ball on the end of each thing. You know, and you won't need to buy a case for it, because if you drop it, it'll just like bounce off those glowing motion controller balls.
That's what they'll do. They'll have the glowing motion version of the Switch.
That sounds like a good prediction to me.
Oh, man.
But yeah, who knows?
Well,
let's talk about Fire Emblem DLC practices.
So the DLC, if you bought all of it, is more expensive than the base game.
Guys, this is messed up. Let me show you. So, hey, that's not the one. That's not even the one. What happened to the one? There. So I got all the packs. They're going to have 5 DLC packs. You can buy them separately, or you can buy them together.
That's nice.
In a season pass, that is $45. Wow. And the base game is $40, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so
let's buy a second game.
That's what you would think. This better be more content that's in the main game, plus a little more. This is essentially map packs. Map packs. Essentially what it is. Dungeons and map packs. The first one, which is being released the day of. So this is day of DLC. This is on the same day as release. This was May 19th. Came out. What this is an $8 DLC pack that includes a new dungeon and 2 new maps. Great for gaining more items, money, and experience points. So that's already going to upset longtime fans, because what this essentially is grinding maps. A way for you to just get more experience, a way for you to just get more money and items without fighting through the next thing. So a way to make the game easier for $8. Then you've got the next one, which is May 25th, 1 week after the game launches. You get a new dungeon. Also includes 2 new challenging maps. So a dungeon and 2 more maps. These ones are hard. DLC Pack 3, which is $15. Oh, that last one was $9.99, by the way. The next one, $15. The Mysterious Dungeon, or the Mysterious Dungeon includes in this pack. What the freak? That is not worded well. Anyways, it's got exclusive abilities to upgrade characters to classes that are not in the main game. So exclusive classes.
Oh, right. It's like the top tier class.
For $15. And that releases 1 week after the game comes out. You get classes that you can't get in the game.
Wow. See, that's a little too far right there.
Then, June 1st, which is 2 weeks after the release of the game, for $12.99, discover the previously untold history of Valentia in a prologue pack, complete with a new story content, additional voice acting, and details of the rise and deliverance of Zofia. This collection of challenging maps includes new support conversations between selected heroes, as well as the ability to take command of a character players won't be able to control in the main game. DLC Pack 5 for $5.99. More information about this later. Okay, this is an example of stuff that was taken out of the game and sold separately to you. People might make the argument that, well, it was released earlier in Japan. It was released 1 month earlier in Japan. Right. Came out on April 20th. Came out on May 19th outside of Japan.
Did this DLC schedule line up in Japan the same way it's playing out here? Do they already have this DLC?
I don't know. Even if they don't, though, this is $45 for some extra dungeons
within
and
just
maps
a few weeks of the game.
Classes.
Right? Yeah.
It's not a full. It's not as much content as in that game. I guarantee that, and it costs more money. What the freak is that? What is that?
Yeah.
So if you buy the season pass at $45, what if you bought them all individually? What would that add up to?
I think it's 50 something bucks if you buy them individually. So it's let's see. What was the first one? $7.99, $9.99, $14.99, $12.99, $5.99. What does that add up to? I think it's something like
it's 50 some 52.
It's like $52 or something like that. So
it's $7.
So the season pass
Subway,
you save like $7 by getting the season pass. Yeah. But this is exorbitant. This is unbelievable.
I hope this fails for Nintendo.
I am not touching any of that DLC. Yeah. I'm not buying a single. I bought the game. I have not played it yet. I've been strictly focused on Final Fantasy XII right now. But from what I've heard, it's really good. It's a remake of the second one back from the 80s. So, some of the things, they feel a bit archaic. Some of the really good ideas that came later on in the series aren't necessarily there. It does things a lot differently than the traditional formula, kind of very similarly to how Zelda 2 was so different from Zelda 1, and Final Fantasy 2 was so different from Final Fantasy 1. They had a thing for that back then. And then they just went back to the original thing. But regardless of all that, the things that are different in it excite me. And I think I will really like this game. I'm fairly certain that I'll enjoy it quite a bit when I play it. So buying the base game, not an issue for me.
It's just the gateway.
The base supporting game is this just the at all.
Beginning.
I can't bring myself to do it. That's messed up.
I get the sense that Nintendo feels like, with what's happened the past 2 years or so, that Fire Emblem is a franchise that they can, for lack of a better word, milk in this sort of fashion. I mean, like Fire Emblem Heroes is the game that came out with the freemium model. Like Mario, there will probably be a future Mario that's a freemium mobile game, but Fire Emblem Heroes is the one that it almost seems tailor-made for that. In some way, like be able to do map packs because the game is structured generally as a series of maps. I guess Mario games you could add worlds or levels or whatever, and they might do that. They might do that in the future. But I feel like they're pushing Fire Emblem a little more.
Well, the thing is that these are just like, I don't know, like little extra kinds of things. I mean, who knows how long the dungeon is? Like maybe it's an hour or two long dungeon. Something pretty substantial, but still, like, and everyone does this, and I don't mean to parrot what other people are saying, and I've said it myself a million times, but it really is just the best example. Like The Witcher 3's expansions they give you so much value. It's like you feel like, oh man, I'm getting a good deal by buying this. A $10 expansion for Heart of Stone was like huge, like a ton of stuff. Versus some maps,
like Heart of Stone, for example, you got about 10 hours. You got about $1 an hour out of it.
Yeah, and so I think that
as a metric, $1 an hour for the DLC appears to be something that, at least on your end, you feel like you got value out of, right? $1 an hour.
I mean, but additionally to that, it's not just like here's some more like
filler content.
Here's some extra quests that you spend most of your time collecting or going around doing kill quests or something like that. It's like substantial, story-driven, like really well-written stuff that that is and it just like fills out like Heart of Stone. Okay, for instance, just using that one, I think that it's not as good as Blood and Wine, which was a little more expensive and it was longer and everything like that. And just was better structured overall. But Heart of Stone, just for instance, the way that it expanded on things, there's a character you meet at the very, very beginning of The Witcher 3, in the first like pub you go to, the first like tavern. And you sit down and he's real mysterious. He like knows things about you. And he knows about people that you're looking for and stuff like that. And he just knows these things that it's weird that he knows. And it's like, is this guy following me? Like, what's up with this guy? And beat the game because no DLC hasn't been it. And I forgot about that guy. Yeah. Totally forgot about that guy. Right? So I'm playing through Heart of Stone for the first time, and there's this guy who kind of steps into the shadows, and he's speaking to me as if I should know who he is. And it's like, you don't remember me? He's like, and my thought was like, no, who the fetch are you? And he steps into the light, and it takes me a second to recognize his face. Like, oh shoot, it's that guy. Like, this was expanding upon something. It was planned, obviously, that they were going to, do something with that character in the future, and this expansion, like, it was exactly expanded something.
So in the core game, they left loose ends that they could tap into.
Yeah,
like that. So it felt good because it felt meaningfully woven into the original game.
Right.
Yeah.
So using that as because I'm just curious because I think sometimes everyone has different motivations for playing games, right? Mm-hmm. And so I wonder if there's a significant enough audience out there that just freaking wants skins
or
maps,
XP
and
gold.
For whatever reason that's meaningful to them. I hated the first thing that they brought out for Breath of the Wild, where it was like you get a Switch shirt and a bunch of chests and stuff. Such a waste when you play that game and you realize like that's who cares how much money you got in those chests. You could have gotten 50,000 rupees. Okay, I don't know. In some ways that can even ruin a game's experience.
Totally.
That feels like no thought.
Yeah.
Right? That feels like obvious.
Right.
I think skins, but to be honest, I think the games that are making the most money off of DLC right now are making it off of skins. League of Legends, Overwatch, stuff like that. I feel like, story is so much harder to do. Write a story in a sense that it could still be tapped into in a meaningful way and not feel like you're exploiting the story or that you wrote an incomplete story to begin with.
Yeah.
I think if your story's big enough, it's easy to have characters that didn't go anywhere.
Totally.
Because, fine, you can't have everyone important in the story, right? If it's a smaller story, that's so much harder to do, I feel like. So I feel like a game in the format like The Witcher lends itself very easily towards, not easily like it's easy to do, but it's a format that I believe
lends itself.
You can lend you can keep those gaps and they don't feel like watching Lost or something where you're like, you're not telling me something on purpose, and then buy the DLC. It feels like you were okay with it just being the way it was, and then they added something meaningful that you weren't expecting.
Yes.
So,
but
I could see that
with Fire Emblem, the fact that this DLC is coming like so early,
right.
People will not have finished this game by the time the DLC is already coming around.
Yeah, it's just so obvious that this was stuff like the classes. That they had at least like designed or like put in place and balanced those before. They didn't create that in the month span after the game was released to give it to you. Like that was in the game before, and they took it out, and now they're selling to you separately for $15. That feels like you're taking something away and then making me buy it separately versus, okay, we finished the thing. How can we add to this? How can we make it even better? How can we fix problems or create new content that makes it even better?
It's funny. They probably will do that too. Like in a year, there will likely be even more.
Yeah, if they do
DLC
that,
packs,
I'll buy that
coming out.
If they do that, if they have an expansion in a way that you can tell, like they saw feedback or that. They wanted to expand on certain ideas, and they make something of value, and they sell it at the right price, I'll buy it. But I'm not buying any of this.
So, if this is supported and if this is successful, then they'll do this for Mario games.
Absolutely.
They'll do this for Zelda games. And so, like what we talked about last time we talked about this, is like pick when they're doing it poorly and then get upset with the company. Don't just get mad because DLC in general. Yeah. Get upset at the specifics, and Breath of the Wild DLC is a very different case than this one.
Yeah. So, okay, Monster Hunter games. They do DLC, but they also do free crap.
Yes.
Constantly. They spread it out. They give you free stuff. Splatoon had DLC because you could buy Amiibo that gave you certain equipment or whatever. Yeah, but they were constantly giving you new crap. So nobody complained, right? I feel like companies like Nintendo with Fire Emblem should be continuing to give people new content for free to kind of cultivate goodwill. Yes. To be like you can continue to have a good experience here without spending more money. I think that's important to do because I think when you don't do that, people start to get suspicious of you.
Excellent example is their day one DLC, the map packs that give you more experience and items. There's no reason why they should make people pay for that. No.
Yeah. No. The day one DLC, like with Breath of the Wild 2, it just feels like the least creative kind. It's usually the obvious low-lying fruit.
Yeah,
right? It's just like, hey, how many people out there are just really crazy and pumped and will buy anything at this point in time?
Okay. Right. Let's take advantage of them.
Totally. Yeah, they're always looking for the whales, right? They're always looking for the people that can't spend enough money on the things they like. So, with mobile games, that's what funds them. It's like we were mentioning Puzzle and Dragons earlier. Puzzle and Dragons, I think they had less than 5% of their players ever made an in-app purchase. I played that game just off and on for 3 years. I never made a single freaking purchase.
Yeah.
Ever. That game was literally free for me. But the people that do, they spend a crap ton of money,
support
and everyone
the
wants to
whole
get
thing.
those people. Yeah, they're like, if we can find a little window for those guys.
But
So-
you can't forget the 95%. You
Right.
can't. You have to make a good game first,
Yeah,
so that the 95. You can't just put all your hopes into that little 5%. You'll lose your whole fan base.
Now, I mean, I'll determine how I feel about it when I play it. Like, it could be that the game feels very complete on its own.
prologue one seems
Yeah, the
interesting.
prologue one.
But that's only if the story is good and they give you something to where you want to know the prologue. And I don't know how effectively that's going to be done.
Yeah, and like the whole like classes thing, like,
No, that's
am
stupid.
I going to get through
That's
this
incredibly
game
dumb.
and have no need for these classes, or is it like, oh shoot, like
I better pay
this
money. and
feels
get
like
these
something
classes.
that I would have liked or needed or whatever. I don't know. I can't speak for any of that. Maybe the game feels really, really good and complete, you know, on its own, and you don't need any of that stuff. And it is just like, who are the 5% who will just buy anything? Maybe it is that. I don't know. All I'm saying is that like it's not a good look to release a season pass that costs more than the game and gives you less content than the game.
Has anyone done that
not a
before?
good look.
Has anyone released a season pass that's more expensive than their
season
game?
passes are generally about $20,
Yeah, about
$25.
$20-ish. Even like Call of
20,
Duty,
about
when they
$24,
release,
$25.
usually Call of Duty games will have like 3 new map packs spaced out over time, and that's
And again, that makes sense to me because games should probably cost more like 80 today than 60, you know. But I don't know.
that's on the developers. To be completely honest, that's on the developers how many people they hire for their projects, how big they try to make their video games.
Right.
They have 100% control over that.
That's true.
They have complete control on that end. So, you know, if that's actually a pressure on them, then they freak, man.
They
if
can
if
alleviate
the
that
video game
in-house.
industry is just hiring so many people they can't support at this price point, and they're just going to drive themselves all into the ground, then fine, just
they
crash the whole thing. Let's start
pretty
over
dumb,
again, like
yeah.
in the early '80s. Like, come on.
They need to back up for sure. I think that game development is, and we've said this a million times, there's no need to say it again, but it's too big. It's too bloated. It takes too much time.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is like loosely tied here, but I saw a release yesterday, I think, saying that PlayStation Network has 70 million monthly active users. PlayStation Network, right? And it's this great milestone that they hit and everything. But when you think about that in light of the fact that Pokemon Go in April reported that they have 65 million daily active users.
Wow.
That this whole, you know what I mean? The economics and the business practices from the mobile world are totally kind of showing that they can make more money
Yeah.
than the older game practices. So this type of stuff
you're reaching
is
people who wouldn't probably sit down at a video game console.
right, and then the types of purchases those people are okay with making
Yeah.
or not. You know, I just like it's. I feel like it's a little bit inevitable at some point that we're going to see more of that, and there will probably always be that core group that kind of holds fast and like doesn't, you know, give into all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But hopefully their core experience isn't degraded, like you were saying, like with this game. Hopefully this is still, it feels like a game that isn't missing parts.
Well, the traditional console market is definitely shrinking somewhat.
Yeah.
And if that trend continues, then it was a nice run. I enjoyed video games in my youth. I'll move on to reading novels or something, but
To me, it's just a matter of controls. It's just like,
I
if
know,
you've got
that's
good
what I hate
controls-
about
I'm
the phone.
Yeah,
I'm
good
not
controls.
moving over to that bullcrap. That's just not something that interests me at all. But
Let's see. Well, DLC. Rage about DLC, or tell us why we didn't rage enough about DLC.
Yeah.
I tried to
Get
rage.
mad at
I
us.
tried to rage pretty hard, but to be honest, like there are more important things in life. I just won't buy it. I just won't buy it.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
Any
Okay,
questions?
Ermac, thank you for submitting a question today. What draws you more, JRPGs or WRPGs, and why? This will connect a little bit into the last question, I think, which is what makes a RPG? What gameplay elements make an RPG? JRPGs and WRPGs,
The lines are beginning to blur.
differ, but like they borrow a lot from each other too.
Yeah.
But you know, when we're talking about early on, the WRPGs were more of the tabletop traditional. I'm going to sit
Dungeons
down
and
and
Dragons
play
format.
a role.
Yeah.
I'm going to create a person and I'm going to step into the role of that person. I customize the way they look, I customize their stats, I customize their abilities, and their race and appearance and everything. And then I'll step into that role, and I'll get prompts, and I choose what to say. And that was kind of like what Western RPG was. And then JRPG,
that's what RPGs were at all.
Yeah, that's what an RPG was. That's what an RPG. It's a role-playing game. You step into the role of another person, and you pretend to be that person. That's a role-playing game, right? JRPGs early on took certain elements, like the way they break up stats and the way equipment is utilized and stuff like that. But
and kind of the setting, the fantasy setting.
But a little bit more. They took a little bit of the role playing out of it by giving you a cast of people that you follow. You aren't necessarily assuming a role. You're more or less like controlling a party. Like you're in multiple roles. you're using this person for this role and this person for this role in terms of battle mechanics and stuff. But with story, it was much more just you're just watching a good story or whatever.
Right.
So I don't think that one or the other draws me more. I think that you can have a really good game sort of in both styles, and Final Fantasy in particular really like connected with me as a kid, and in such a way that like I was motivated to make videos about it. And because I was motivated to make videos about it, and a bunch of other people who also like JRPGs found those videos, I now find myself running a YouTube channel basically just playing JRPGs all the time. But it is true that there are still many Western RPGs I've enjoyed, and I just don't get a chance to talk about those as much because the channel is very JRPG, central. But I don't know. There are things that I like about both. Sometimes I want to sit down and I just want like a really good story, and sometimes like I want to do more customization and play a character versus. Like, I can't say which, like, that one is better or that I like one better than the other. It's just they're different, and sometimes you have this, you crave that flavor, and sometimes that one. So,
yeah, I think originally the distinction wasn't WRPG or JRPG, it was console RPG and PC RPG.
Yeah.
Console is what we now consider JRPG, and PC is what we consider WRPGs. PCs weren't that popular in Japan, and have only recently become more popular because you just don't have a lot of space for crap like that just in your home all the time. Not that people didn't have computers, but people didn't have computers that they used at their home to play video games.
All right.
So to me, I've always, just in general in gaming, just across the board, has been more drawn to console gaming because it's a more shared experience for me. Usually I'm like growing up, it was with like my brothers, right? And we'd be playing, and we would watch each other play. And we also didn't have a good enough PC to play anything other than that Buick golf game.
Yeah.
And later on, SimCity and crap. But yeah, that golf game we played all the time. So for me, like, whatever was going to be on a console was what I was mostly going to play. And so I still find myself mostly drawn that way. I've played a lot of PC games, but I mostly still would prefer to have my couch and TV experience or my handheld experience as opposed to... I mean, it's social, but also just more comfortable, Like, I really dug when Steam came out with that, what'd they call it, their whole living room display kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
I used to do that. I used to run my laptop, like, hooked up to the TV and play games that way. Played Bioshock Infinite that way. Played Skyrim that way, half and half. But, I mean, to me, that's almost a bigger consideration. Like, the form factor and, like, the convenience versus... the heritage of what makes this genre that genre or whatever, because I think the lines are so blurred now anyways. I've probably played more JRPGs though, but I have not because I sought out just JRPGs. Like the thing is, I probably would have played more if we had a PlayStation. I was always pissed that we didn't have a PlayStation.
That's the biggest reason
they were all on the PlayStation.
Biggest
and
reason
we had the 64, which I still loved, but I would have played way more. But I was just thinking back to like why I was so drawn to Final Fantasy VII. And I've talked about this before, but I think it was Kason who got for a Christmas present one year bought me like a EGM or whatever it was at the time that was all about Final Fantasy VII because I had seen it and I was bad enough that I just wanted to read about it because we could never play it. because the flip side was buy a PlayStation and buy that game. And that was gonna be way more than buying a magazine. But I was drawn in because of like the marketing and the aesthetic of how they marketed Final Fantasy VII. Dude, that guy's got a huge sword. That's crazy. That dude's arm is a gun. Holy crap! Like he's riding a motorcycle and he's fighting crazy monsters, and like that was just so. It was the marketing. I feel like JRPGs have been marketed better, at least historically, than WRPGs. WRPGs feel more niche in a way that JRPGs are still niche, but not like less accessible, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. So I guess in a roundabout way, I'm not more drawn to one or the other. I just, by happenstance, have played one more than the other because of where they end up and how they are marketed and crap. Like, I think the Elder Scrolls series is the only WRPG I can think of that really has historically had like a big enough marketing budget to compete with something like Final Fantasy. You know what I mean? Not like... And we're seeing more now, like you could say, to what extent Horizon Zero Dawn is a WRPG. It's debatable.
Yeah,
but
we get into that.
But I'm just trying to think of other WRPG franchises that market the same way. Because a lot of that comes down to marketing. Like, what kids are seeing what commercials on TV.
Skyrim, like Elder Scrolls and Fallout do a pretty good job.
Bethesda does.
The Witcher did a really good job with its marketing.
You know, I don't remember seeing much marketing for The Witcher.
I do, but I think it's because I'm online looking at video game stuff. I don't think they had anything on TV. Whereas like Final Fantasy 15 had like Super Bowl ads and stuff.
Oh, they did. And they had ads like I'm watching a reality Hulu show with my wife and Final Fantasy 15 ad came up, which felt so weird, by the way. I think it was the one with that voiceover, that dude who sounded ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
He was like telling you what you can do in the game.
Yeah.
Or not Super Bowl ads. It was during Thanksgiving football games that I saw.
Yeah.
That's right. They did that. That's why a Super Bowl ad would have been kind of funny.
Yeah,
Too late, guys.
That would have not been
Yeah. The game came out like 3 months ago.
I feel like I'm just a product of marketing. I'm going to be talking about this in my new Lost in Translation, but to be completely honest, part of the reason why I'm interested in Japan is because of the way Japan has marketed itself.
Right.
Like, I started learning Japanese because I wanted to be able to read the Japanese bootleg ROM we had of Pokemon Gold and Silver.
Yeah.
And I started learning hiragana because I was like, holy crap, we could decipher this, which is so crazy. In retrospect, we wouldn't have.
Even still.
We thought it was like an alphabet. Like,
yeah.
We were so off. Plus, the low-res screens, it's even harder.
Oh my gosh, yeah, where you have like a 10-pixel tall like letter
They just condense
font,
it, unless you
and
know
kanji
it.
is insane in that.
It's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's marketing for me. Anyways, you know.
I think
sounds about right.
I think that with JRPGs, what I tend to like more about them are characters and cast. They tend to spend a lot of time designing unique people to be in the story. They almost go too far in trying to make every single character be like a totally different person from the other, and like this guy is. They fall into archetypes because of that often. So there are problems with that, but I like. The focus on character, the focus on design and personality to make them unique and distinguished from everybody else. But I would think, generally speaking, I enjoy worlds in Western RPGs a little bit more because they feel more grounded to me a lot of times. And that's kind of what I'm looking for in terms of immersion. Whereas JRPGs tend to have really crazy twists and worlds that are, more out there, I guess. And that's a matter of taste. I'm not saying one's better than the other, but I tend to enjoy the world and the immersion aspect of Western RPGs, traditional Western RPGs, and I tend to enjoy the plots and characters of JRPGs a little more. So it just depends on what I'm looking for. I think
one interesting thing, like difference between a lot of Western RPGs and JRPGs is like either being first person or having like a character creation kind of thing in the Western RPGs. The Japanese RPGs don't have as much. I think they're doing it more now. Yeah. But traditionally they haven't. Whereas the Westerners either want to be first person that person or they want to create that person and often end up making themselves. Right. It's a very like I am in this game kind of thing. Whereas in Japan they're, speaking to the individualist versus collectivist, social structures.
That makes sense.
It's kind of like, oh, I am, I am all these people. We are one. It's like this whole thing, this whole group mentality, instead of, in the West where it's like, no, I'm the one hero and it's me. It's me.
Yeah.
It's literally me.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
And everyone loves me.
You're
and I save the world.
See, WRPGs being told in the first person versus JRPG stories being told like third person. You're more flexible in third person. Like you can be omniscient and go anywhere and show anything.
First person omniscient is not
so
a
no
thing.
no. Well, I mean, and when you try and do something along those lines, it causes problems. Like Final Fantasy 15,
Totally.
they tried to do the first person ish, right?
Yeah,
sticking with the perspective. But
then
they break from it, and then it causes a little bit of issues because why did you break from it then and not then?
Yeah.
But JRPGs lend themselves towards that third-person storytelling, where WRPGs, it's like, what did you see? What did you not see?
Yeah.
And you don't ever, like playing Skyrim, you are there at all of these events.
Right.
You are physically there. I'm trying to think of a time in Skyrim where you ever see anything where you are not present, and I don't think it happens. That, to me, that's a pretty big distinction, as well. Because... There's advantages that can come from the first person because you can leave things mysterious pretty easily.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you weren't there, and sorry you weren't there, so what do you want us to do? But in a JRPG, when you come back and, the town was destroyed, and I feel like when stuff happens off camera, sometimes it feels like, they didn't want to have to show that. In first person, it's like, because I get it, I wasn't there.
Because I wasn't there. I see.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Interesting.
Of course, there's exceptions to all of that.
Yeah, and this is... Everything we're saying here is not like a hard rule. It's just
I know, because they've blended, especially in the
general
past
sense.
10 years. They've blended so much together.
Like,
it's hard to distinguish what's what now.
60% of the time, this is the case. Like, it's obviously you're going to find outliers, but I think that talking in a general sense and in a traditional sense, and this is something that we'll get into in another topic, probably topic 5. But how games are sort of just like merging ideas and sort of like every game is an RPG open world, character driven.
Even sports games are beginning to trend. And it's like, wow, the genres have really crossed.
Yeah.
Okay,
that was
next
a good one,
question.
Erica. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okrax asks, what goes into a good remaster or remake? Whew. Okay, this is what I would say. I would say that an ideal remaster for me would be one where they upgrade it visually or make it HD or make it cleaner or whatever, or fix certain texture issues like tattooed abs, right? Like
Right.
that's the obvious thing. A visual upgrade and a convenience upgrade so that I don't have to pull out an old machine that barely works anymore to play this game.
Right.
I can get it on my machine that I use every day right now. So those two things are obvious. I think one that I would like to see more often is kind of what like Final Fantasy XII is doing right now, an addition in some way mechanically to it. A different way of approaching it, or like Zelda does with Master Quest, where they change puzzles in the dungeons. They mix it up so that it feels like new content. You're not just doing the game the same way you've done it 5 times, going through the motions and playing it the way that is optimal, but giving you a new way of approaching it. And in addition to that, fixing issues with the previous version, like listening to whatever feedback they got or criticism they got and addressing that in a remaster. That to me would be an ideal remaster. Just like taking a game, keeping what's great, making it more convenient, making it look better, and expanding on it in whatever small ways you can to make it even more enjoyable or convenient for players. So when it comes to remasters, that's what I'd say. For remakes, that's hard to say too, because you don't want to throw away all the things that made the original game great, but it really is more or less a retelling with modern tools of what this was. And that's harder to do because you're going to upset people like almost no matter what. Mm-hmm. But I would hope that you would at least keep the base mechanics the same, which is what they are not doing with Final Fantasy VII. It's not a turn-based RPG anymore. It's a action RPG. That's not how I would do it. I'm not saying I'm not going to enjoy Final Fantasy VII Remake. Maybe it's going to be really good. I'm withholding judgment until I actually play that game. But I think that going a little too far in changing what the entire game is probably not the smartest thing to do, unless your entire goal is just to capture new people with it. It's like, but with an established fan base like Final Fantasy VII, I'm sure they're trying to tap into the people who played that originally. And if you're going to change the whole thing, that's a tough call. I'm not sure that I would make that call, but
that's funny.
It's like,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, you have a remake. You could just make a new game if you're going after a new fan base. Like, why remake the same game in the first place if you're looking to capture a whole brand new group of people? Like, I get it, the marketing department probably loves it, right? Because it makes their job
strengthen
easier.
Their. You make more Mickey Mouse movies because you want people to be more into Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, and you didn't want to make Prince and the Pauper as Disney, but you did have this Mickey Mouse character, and you could make Prince and the Pauper with Mickey Mouse, and which they did in like the 80s or something. And now you made this Prince and the Pauper movie, and you actually got people to come watch it because Mickey Mouse was in it, and you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like, I get it, but that's really, I don't know. You're taking advantage of your audience at that point. If you're making a new game, but selling it as a remake, but in actuality, it's just a whole new game. You're just taking advantage of people with the namesake.
And when we say
you've
new
taken
game,
it a little too far.
When we say new game, we mean like mechanically new, and the story will be at least basically the same. But we're just talking about like how the game is played, like how you approach fights and strategy. Like that is basically a new game. With
In
Final
some
Fantasy
ways,
Remake.
it's like as long as the story's the same, what's wrong kind of thing. And I could kind of see that from a developer's perspective, being like, hey, let's give them the same story but in a completely new way. And I see that as being appealing to certain developers.
I don't think that's necessarily the wrong thing to do.
Because for some games that might actually be genius.
I just think it's got to be like marketed heavily that way. Like this is not Final Fantasy VII brought to you on PlayStation 4. This is a new vision
of a whole new game. Yeah,
this is somebody else's take on what it could be, and if they were to hit it like that and make the narrative surrounding it sort of like push that idea, I think it'll be easier to accept changes and stuff like that. And like, oh, this is a different guy's vision of the Final Fantasy VII story. Okay, let's see what he. Yeah, that's the way I'm treating it, even though they haven't really said that. But
with the word "re" in front, I mean, you have expectation. This is a repeat. This is the same thing, but it's not.
It's really
it's a different version of the game that you're familiar with, and that you're not familiar with this version of that game.
I feel like as a general rule of thumb, kind of with a lot of things in life, the 80-20 rule could totally apply to this, where if you change at least 20%, you know what I mean? You still have that major chunk of what people are going to expect. You've got enough different that it's its own thing. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's more in line with what I would expect and would have preferred from a Final Fantasy VII Remake, for example. Like, and that's like, how do you measure this percent? How do you measure how different these graphics are or whatever? Like, I understand it's like really kind of ambiguous, but when video games are about systems, and when you throw every single system that we can tell out the window from the previous game, then whatever you replace it with is what it is, but all you're actually keeping is the story, characters, graphics are completely different.
It's not really a remake, it's a new game.
No, it is. So it's like, to me, if you break outside of that 80-20 in at least a generally understandable sense, I think that you're making something different enough. People should treat it as this is different, right? Like, I remember playing the what did they call it? It was the GoldenEye like remake on the Wii. That. But it was GoldenEye 007. Yeah. But like, I liked it at first, but after I played it, I was like, what the crap was that? Like, I was so excited for it to come out because I love GoldenEye.
Right.
But after I played the whole thing, I was like, what did I just do? And I don't feel more satisfied, and I probably would have enjoyed playing the original. And I don't know, like, it felt like it didn't have its own identity. It felt like it was trying to be the other thing when
That
it shouldn't
was-
have, and it was trying to be its own thing when it shouldn't have.
That was was that like level for level, shot for shot?
In a
remake,
lot of ways,
or-
it was. In a lot of ways, like
just
the
some of the
dance
levels
with
are pretty
a different Bond. It was
It was Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig in place of.
Yeah, it was weird, man. It was weird. It felt wrong. It's sort of like if we all swapped heads or something, and like it's a Dark Pixel remake, you know, like it's like whoa, okay, you know, it's just like I don't know. It's not the same thing.
Now we have to do that for the next podcast.
Absolutely.
We track heads and just put them on different bodies. And Dark Pixel remake.
See how it goes.
Dark Pixel podcast episode 1 remake.
Episode 1.
I think you're onto something with the 80-20 thing, though, and as soon as you mention that, I think of, like, a lot of times that's how courts will decide whether something's plagiarism or not, is based on the 80-20 rule. Yeah. And here's the test. If somebody else made the game that you're making, can you have sued them for plagiarism, right? And if the answer is no, then you made a game way too different, and someone else could have made that game and gotten away with it, and it would have been different enough to where they wouldn't have even gotten sued in court.
Make the spoke strophe run around with Bungus or whatever.
So if somebody made a game
Mungus.
called Crisis Core 2 Remake, right? If somebody did that and it was what we see, and a court case threw it out because it was too different, then that means that the company made a mistake. They took it way too far. Really? But if another company made what Square Enix is currently making, and I'm not talking about Avalanche or who's making it right now.
CNC.
CNC.
Well, there's
I'm not talking about a company that they're letting make it. I'm talking about, like, you know, what if Nintendo made this game here, and and if you guys get what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's
obviously,
kind of the whole thing. Like you, it's not a remake if you change it too much. If another company could have made the game and gotten away legally with it, it's not a remake. It's a new game. It's a whole different thing.
Right. It's so tough. It's why copyright law is tough, right? Because it's so subjective.
Because how do you decide? You have to quantify what a system's value is in the game and a story's value in the game in order to decide whether or not it's 20% different.
Right.
Like, what if a certain character does not die anymore? Does that impact 20% of the story? Is the story 20% different now? Because that character's in it for the whole thing.
Does that also have to apply to characters themselves? Does
each character need to be
like
20?
design need to change by 30%?
But has it already?
And his name changed by 30%.
His name,
like Spoke Strophe.
Claude.
Spoke Strophe is different enough, but does he also have to have a different haircut,
black hair?
But if you look at
he can still keep the big sword,
If you look at the pixel art or even the drawn concept art, is the current Cloud is the current Cloud Strife different from the 1997 version by 20%? I think it's pretty close.
I think
his hair is way shorter. His eyes.
He's more similar to later iterations of him, right? So
the Advent Children.
The current Mickey Mouse doesn't really look that much like the first Mickey Mouse, but it's still the same character. I guess. Yeah. But like what Mike was saying, like I don't want anyone to think that we are saying people should not make a game that
do different things.
That's doing what Final Fantasy VII Remake is doing, because I think that's fascinating. Mm-hmm. I like what Mike was saying. Seeing somebody else's take on something, and if you approach it that way, is really cool. It's like a case like when you were in film school, and everyone had to direct a scene. Like we did that one from Rear Window, which I wonder what happened to.
I have it.
I tried to do my best Jimmy Stewart impression. It was so jacked.
Torso. Yeah, I remember that.
But seeing what everyone made. And seeing an original and then being like, but here's everyone's interpretation of that is cool. That's so cool to see. You know, like there's value in that as well.
Because the original is still there.
Totally.
And it was masterfully done, and you can still go and do that whenever you want. You can watch it, you can play it.
But
the new thing doesn't take away from that.
I think it's an expectations game. Like that, everyone was expected to not do that literally.
That's where I think the marketing needs to
They need to prep people and be like, this is...
because it's all about managing expectations. And if somebody plays Crisis Core 2 Remake, expecting to play the original Crisis Core 2...
They're going to be pissed.
They're not going to be happy. But, and that's why I think using the word remake in the title is partially a mistake. Because that automatically
reimagining
gets people to... Cool.
See, you know what's weird though? Even Final Fantasy 12 isn't doing that. They're calling Zodiac Age. Like they came up with a creative title, subtitle
that makes it
separate, and that's like, oh, this is Final Fantasy 12. But that game is way more the exact same as Final Fantasy 12 than this game is Final Fantasy 7, right?
Yeah.
But even for that, they're like, oh, this is like a whole different thing.
They have a whole new character progression.
They didn't call it Final Fantasy 12 Remaster. They didn't call it. They could have.
They could have called it Remix 1.5.
Remix. They could have called it Remake.
Zodiac Age. What else can I put on that?
Well, actually,
Fragmentary.
the word remix is actually a pretty good word, I think.
Remix?
Because I used to love looking up remixes. Like, back when we lived in Arizona.
That's true.
I would look up, like,
is Final Fantasy 7 remix.
Like a Kung Fu Fighting, but like a techno remix. Like, I was way into that crap.
Yeah,
like,
me too.
I wanted to hear someone just mess with it and hit it in like a way that I wasn't expecting. But that's probably it's his whole own culture within music.
That is what this is, though. That's a good point. This is a remix of Crisis Core 2,
and it just happens to be made
it's like
20 years after the original, so it looks very impressive.
Yeah, it's like as if a modern artist, which they do all the time, they remix a song from the 70s or whatever, and they have all these
it's me first
electronic elements and things like that they didn't have back then. Compression methods to make it like super huge and stuff. So it's a similar idea, and I am into that, which is why I'm not upset about the changes they're making. A lot of people will be like, oh, I made that video last week talking about how the director of Zodiac Age is talking about what they would do if they were to remake more games. Right. And there were some people in the comments being like, if they were to take Final Fantasy VI and do to it what they're doing to 7, I would be pissed. I'd be projectile vomiting and murdering people and stuff. Obviously joking, but they'd lose their minds. And like, I understand to a certain degree what you mean there, but there is still value in my mind with just a different artist taking something and giving you an entirely different interpretation of that. See, and it does not invalidate the original at all.
I think the hope is that you're the one remaking it, right? It's like, if it's to be remade
my way,
I should be the one remaking it, but I can't.
My interpretation.
So since I can't do it, I'm going to really hope that you're doing what I would do.
I would only be upset if they stopped distributing the original version, which they would never do.
Right. Yeah.
Although
not for that game.
Well,
6 maybe.
Final Fantasy 6.
7 no.
Final Fantasy 6 with the weirdo smoothed out graphics is I don't know why they did that. But,
they'll distribute that one forever.
But I mean, the game is still there, right? If they were ever like, we're gonna stop selling the PlayStation Final Fantasy 7 once this is out because this is it now, guys. People would be pissed, right? But you also have to remember, like,
it's
there.
On the PS4, you can download Final Fantasy 7, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have it.
It's there.
You can go play it again. And honestly, it would probably be, it's going to sound kind of harsh, but it might be kind of a waste of Square Enix's time if all they were doing was a visual upgrade to that game.
Because the game's so good.
While there's some parts where you could improve the gameplay experience because you can tell the depth or something. If you could move the camera a little, it would help.
Would nice.
I still think
or the cutscene to gameplay difference is kind of startling sometimes.
Yeah. I still think they should do that to some degree, even if it's just a mod to whatever PlayStation 4 version they have, just because there are so many people that want that. They just want a visual upgrade to the original game. That's it. And
but mod people
maybe
have done that. It's
some
pretty good.
It's pretty good, but like if they did an official version of that didn't have like Advent Children Cloud with like this, like it's a very different texture, like style. You know what I mean? They're not congruent. So if there was one that kept with the same visual style across the board, that was like an official, just. I guess you would call it a remaster of Final Fantasy VII, then that was available for all those people who just want the same game but look better, because it is a dated-looking game. I mean, it's hard to get into. A lot of the PS1
games are.
It doesn't look
and that's
right
the
today.
problem. Final Fantasy VII, I actually think is kind of in a unique position because they were in that 2-ish year time span where people didn't know what the crap they were doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out how this 3D thing works.
Are way smoother integrated, even with the cutscenes.
And 9, they've threw it out on Steam and they just bumped the resresolution and everything, which I actually think looks worse, to be honest, because the characters are really crisp looking now against the blurry backgrounds.
They don't
doesn't look like they belong anymore. They're not in the same world. But 7 came out at a time where it was just like
They were just figuring it out.
Yeah, kind of like a lot of early N64 games that were a little bit jacked. But I guess just for me, yeah, I don't know. I would not care to have a visual refresh for 9. I would not care to have a visual refresh.
It's
8,
kind of
iffier, but
specifically 7.
7's where like it would be nice to have, but I'm really curious how many people would buy that, because like how much would that cost Square Enix?
Well, if you're
for
keeping,
how big that game
if you're
is.
keeping the
Cost that
same
much, but-
animations and code and like it's literally the same, you're just
just
like
swapping out
replacing
textures.
this model for this one and
See-
putting in new textures.
Well, okay, so if they're keeping their pre-rendered backgrounds,
Yeah.
But what I would
'Cause
like
your
if they
depth,
were to go
yeah.
into that is not do the
Yeah.
pre-rendered backgrounds because
Oh,
a
I see
little
what
bit
you
of
mean.
camera movement to get a little parallax and
Yeah.
some better perspective on.
Especially in the
sometimes
train-
you're so far
the train
away and you're
graveyard.
like so tiny, and you're like, I don't know, you can't.
I
You
mean,
miss the ladder because
yeah,
you're like.
sure. Like there's, I think, degrees to which they could go in and improve that kind of thing. Maybe throw in some elements on top of the pre-rendered backgrounds that are 3D that can give you some sense of parallax.
If all they were going to do
yeah.
is like what
Like a
you're saying,
projection map.
update the models,
Yeah.
that obviously that would be as much fun.
I
In my
honestly
mind,
think-
I'm seeing like that's all redone, and that's
if they
a
were
lot.
to just do what I'm saying, I think they would satisfy the loud minority who like do not want anything touched at all.
Here's the
in
question
that
then:
game.
do they take Cloud and still make him look kind of chibi-ish?
That's
Just
tough
a
to
better
say.
looking
Like,
chibi,
it's
or do
funny
you go
because
with the full proportion Cloud?
you know I did a whole
Yeah.
walkthrough on the channel actually with mods that make the characters. They swap them for the battles models, which are the taller, more proportionate ones.
Yeah.
And
long legs.
I personally like sometimes the scale was a little weird in certain places because they had obviously designed chairs or tables
Yeah.
or whatever that fit with like the chibi look
Or hands that were huge, so it didn't really.
yeah, like there were instances where it didn't. The scale wasn't quite right, and I think that wouldn't be something that would be too hard to fix.
No, but you're saying you would want the realistic Cloud in those settings, not the like a better.
Yes,
chibi.
yes, I would. But anyways, I played through that whole game, and a lot of people in the first episode were like, "Oh gosh, this looks bad." Like, no. I like you're an idiot for thinking that this is better or whatever.
See, everyone wants
there were some
something
people.
different, dude.
There were some people who followed through by the end and were like, I felt that way at the beginning, but like seeing how you play through it, like yeah,
You can get used to
because
anything.
my whole argument was that like the chibi models. That's not how they're supposed to look. Like they did the pre-rendered scenes, they did the battle models, and these
Right,
are
and they're well proportioned.
the art, the character art, the what do you call it? Concept for the character was this. That's what he's supposed to look like. He's not supposed to look like this deformed midget. Like, so it doesn't make sense to me why people are like, no, I want my deformed midget in the game. It's like that's not congruent with the vision of what this world is supposed to look like, in my opinion. And so, yeah, it makes way more sense to have proportionate models running around on the maps, too. So, I like that mod a lot.
You run into some problems with that when you do things like the party walks into one dude. And then it feels weirder when they look more real.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like...
They all walk into him. Yeah.
Like weird conventions
true,
that
it's
were
true.
carryovers from the SNES.
Exactly.
Where you
Those
didn't
were all
have a
pixel
choice.
art
You couldn't
characters.
add more detail to that sprite if you wanted. You'd have to make a really big character, and that would have other issues, like you'd be too zoomed in all the time. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's it's in that straddling that weird time period. People didn't know how to handle that, and Square Enix will probably never again, outside of World of Final Fantasy, make the
That just
chibi
came
thing
out
on the
last
world map
year.
or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
they wouldn't
funny.
do that again, but it's tough.
But even
because,
with that one,
like,
they
the
give you
people that
kind
were
of the
upset-
option. You can be chibi or you
Or
cannot
you
be
can-
chibi.
that's
That's a
true.
push of a button. You can be switch tall.
Switch it around.
Yep. That game was a lot better than I expected it to be, by the way.
Yeah,
it was just a good
It
game.
looked pretty good. Okrax, that's a really good one. Okrax always has good stuff. If you guys need like good prompts for questions, just say
Ask
Okrax.
Okrax.
Okrax will give you some material.
Okrax asks. We should have a new section.
Okrax.
Okrax asks. That's so hard to say. Okrax asks. Okrax asks.
Asks. Oh wow. Oh my god.
We'll maybe next
New
year.
segment. New segment.
New segment.
Okrax asks.
Thank you, O'Crack.
And then we'll have the O'Cracks come on and ask his question.
Just stand in the corner. Just off camera, you won't see. Oh my gosh. We got one from Paul Sampson here. What do you guys think about multi-genre games incorporating RPG elements such as leveling up, equipment upgrade, in-game currency into their core gameplay? Most recent example, Injustice 2 with levels and equipment upgrades. Which, we actually kind of talked about this last week a little bit. How every other genre has taken RPG elements, and RPGs don't stand out as much now because everything's kind of an RPG, right?
How do we feel about that?
Not only have other genres borrowed from RPGs, but now RPGs are borrowing from those others, and they're all just kind of coalescing into one game type. Like, for instance, like The Witcher is an RPG. I would argue that at its core, Horizon Zero Dawn is an action-adventure game. But the differences between them are not that different. They are basically the same game. But like this traditionally would have been an action-adventure, maybe platformer kind of thing back in the day. And this would have been a freaking like top-down point-and-click RPG, right? So somehow we have reached a point where those two things are the same thing today. It's crazy.
My take on this is that the RPGs are addictive by nature because they take advantage of human psychology. They give you little mini goals, little merit badges, little trinkets, and you get that little dopamine hit when you leveled up. Oh yeah, okay, cool. Oh, but you're gonna have to do that like 60 times or something like that. Some games do it really fast, like Arc the Lad. You're like leveling up every other battle. But I think that video games are always trying to find a new angle to trigger that dopamine, basically, like that create that positive feedback loop and keep people in the system. RPGs aren't. I'm not saying RPGs are like gambling in a casino, but it is in your brain. You're triggering the same systems. It's so I believe that's why we see RPG elements in these other genres, because they can keep people hooked and playing and gotta get to the next level. Like, part of the reason why I played so much Call of Duty back in the day was because you level up, and then you max out your level, and then you're like, you would feel it. You'd be like, I don't feel as much need to play this now. But it's like, but you could prestige, reset your level to 0, get a better symbol, and level up.
And then by the end of that, you get a silver version of that last gun.
And then you can do it again.
And then you do it again. And then you get a gold version.
Yeah.
Then you do it again.
And so, like, the RPG element that Call of Duty brought in, it worked on me. It kept me hooked way longer than I would have played that game. And so, to me at least, that's why everyone's doing it now. Because they want to tap into the addictive nature of RPGs, because they kind of work on almost, like I said, like that merit badge kind of. You've got mini goals that you're hitting, and otherwise it's way harder to create that positive feedback loop, because it needs to be created through the content, like the experiences. Like playing a Mario game can have a similar effect, but it can only be achieved if you tweak your progression curve just right, and if the level designs are just creative enough with each additional step, that when you beat it, or you feel like you could, like Shigeru Miyamoto always says, people need to blame themselves for not beating the level, not the game for not beating the level, right? And if they're blaming themselves, they'll come back and they'll try again, because that's addictive. And so the same with the coin-op arcades, they were kind of trying to play with that addictive nature of just one more time, one more time. That's Civilization. That's a Civilization games. It's totally a meme. It's a whole joke. Just like one more round. But you do it, and then you did everything. And it's like playing Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley. You're like, oh crap, they just start you right on the next thing. Exactly. And you're like, oh, now I got to do this. And they and those objectives are spaced out just right to where you don't realize, like, I've been playing this for several hours. But if I just had one long-term objective, I wouldn't have played as long. Yeah, that's at least what I see.
Yeah. Well, the whole, like, leveling up mechanic is just so intuitively satisfying, because it just, like, I'm progressing.
It's tangible.
I've accomplished. I've done. Now there's another thing. It's just there's just something about it, like you're saying. I think that taps into human psychology, and I think that's why everyone wants to use it, because people just generally enjoy feeling like they're progressing and getting stronger or getting better or whatever. Like people love to have that sense of satisfaction that they're increasing their skill at something. And so,
well, increasing it in a way that you could prove to somebody, hey, I got to level 60 in this.
Yeah.
Where
I'm
if
this
you,
level,
however good you are at like Smash Brothers, you'd have to play that person one-on-one. And it's just harder. Like people like crap like RPI and stuff where you can just show a number and be like,
this is where
I'm
I'm
this
at.
good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the top 25 or whatever.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's definitely the reason why it's happening. Whether or not it's a good thing or not, it just depends on how it's implemented, whether it's lazy or not.
Yeah, I have something to say about whether it's like good or not, because there is a way of looking at this whole thing that's like we talked about this a few weeks ago about why when's the next time we'll see like a big AAA RPG standard like JRPG game again that is turn-based and all that. And I think the reason we don't see them anymore isn't so much that they're becoming different things or it's not viable, it's not profitable anymore. It's because other games, people can get that elsewhere now.
Yeah.
Other genres have taken and kind of stripped from RPGs what RPGs were and what made them unique and special and cool and fun, and have taken them onto themselves, and now all these other genres have those RPG elements that you can find them anywhere now. You don't have to just play a turn-based, Japanese RPG game. You can play any game and you'll get a lot of those same systems. And that is part of the reason why it may be a long time before we see a huge AAA just straight up RPG, because that doesn't appeal to people the same way that the other games do that also have those elements now.
Yeah.
And you can get that elsewhere. And that, I think, is the real... Like, if it's a good thing or a bad thing, well, that's the sacrifice. Other games have these RPG elements, but the sacrifice is now... I mean, turn-based is a hard sell for most people anyways, because it's weird. It was cool because it's an RPG, but in and of itself, if now every game's an RPG, so what's your selling point? Oh, we're turn-based. Well, that's not a good selling point, in my opinion, for most
gamers.
Right.
Gamers, right? It's not AAA. It may, back in the day, it was given to you as, this is, we don't have the technology or whatever. This is the interpretation that we can get now of this battle because I only have a Super Nintendo, and that's just how it is. But now it's like you kind of need to sell people on a turn base when we're in the PS4 era, like it's just a tougher sell. And so I really think RPGs have lost their uniqueness. So whether it's good or bad that other games are doing this, it depends on how much you lament that unique JRPG, AAA, like those awesome games from the late 90s, how they don't exist anymore because other games have taken it.
See, I think a lot of that stuff has gone the route of of RTS, like real-time strategy.
Oh, yeah.
Those games, they're not turn-based, but they carry a lot of the advantages turn-based has, being that you can think about your next move or whatever. Now in like StarCraft or something, you've got to do that really fast.
Yeah.
But you're making multiple moves, you're managing larger groups, or like how a lot of MOBAs work now. I feel like they're tapping into a similar type of potential. Like they realized back in the day that like turn-based games could feel kind of slow, so they innovate, come up with something like ATB or whatever.
Yes, exactly. That was the big innovation.
And then all of a sudden it's like,
time
okay,
hits
now there's a little more sense of urgency. But the biggest sense of urgency is real time.
Exactly.
You can't top that.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't top like real time. So I feel like for anyone who's way into the turn-based thing, I feel like there's some satisfaction to be found in games like StarCraft, maybe some MOBAs, because you're still controlling groups, not overwhelmingly huge groups.
Yeah.
But Civilization games are still turn-based, and you can still feel some of that there, but you can stop and do your chess-style approach and like think about what you're doing next. But the last Civ game sold, I think... It sold incredibly well, but it's still, it's
still not a mega
it's
hit.
not. No.
And that's just the issue with and we've talked about it before, the size and the cost of game development. If you're gonna have a very ambitious title, and you need that to sell to as many people as possible, like Kason was saying, while that might seem weird to people on this channel who love turn-based RPGs, who grew up with them, who like enjoy that style of gameplay, I think we've got to be able to step back and admit we're in the minority.
Yeah.
We're in the minority.
Totally.
Most people do not like that. Most people like something real-time, very visceral, very action-oriented, something more exciting. Not that turn-based isn't exciting, because strategy can be exciting in and of itself, but that demographic is small. This demographic is big. The cost of the game is growing big. So we've got to hit that market. How do we do that? We take the things that everyone loved in those games that play into the human psychology or addictive in nature, and we put them in an action game instead. And that's just how that's how all of these genres sort of coalesced into one big
super
open world
action RPG.
action
I hear that all the
game
time.
where you climb towers. Yep. So that's how it happened.
That's how it happened. We should do a history video on the history of how all games became the same.
How they all came. Well, in the future, there will be one game.
Well, because if you think about it, even the open world, specifically like Assassin's Creed and Horizon and Breath of the Wild, and the way that those games have implemented climbing and jumping and all that, that's platforming.
Yep.
That's what platforming was back in the SNES days.
It's all the same.
And now it's like, you can jump from this to this and do all these, and it's like, dude, you could do that in the old games.
Yeah,
those were the platforming games that
was the point.
Were so fun, and it's like, no, now
Ninja
even
Gaiden.
platformers
they almost always
are
have
every game.
at least one section where you're defending like a cart with some sort of shooting mechanic in it too. So they got the shooters in there.
You got the shooters.
It's all
and freaking
one thing
Breath of
now.
the Wild has that physics engine going. You can snowboard on your shield down a mountain. It's like
tricks, races.
Even the sports games. It's all just one game now. It's freaking crazy.
Well, in films they talk about 4-quadrant films. I think outside films they talk about that too. But like you hit your young, your old, your male, your female. That's how you maximize your profits. So like most blockbuster films, for the most part, try to be 4-quadrant films because that's what'll make the most money. So I feel like video games, 4 quadrants are probably a little different because I don't think they ever try to hit old people.
Yeah,
and a lot of games tend to be overwhelmingly marketed towards men.
Yeah, they ignore females.
So I don't know what the equivalent is in the video game world, but it could be open world. RPG, I don't know, action,
sports, action.
But
that's funny.
Yeah, it's true. You try and hit like how we want to be as narrow as possible, but as broad as possible at the same time. And it's like, as long as you don't lose your identity of like what you are. Like, I still think there's a way to do that kind of thing like effectively. I think Terminator 2 is a freaking sweet movie. Yeah. I think like I don't know. I'm trying to think of like obvious like. That might not even be a 4-quadrant film. I don't know how many women were into Terminator 2.
Well, that was rated R. Typically, 4-quadrant films need to be PG-13. So maybe it was PG-13 because that did exist at the time.
No, I'm not.
Maybe it was.
But Titanic was definitely a 4-quadrant film. Absolutely, you got the romance in there that the women usually want in a film, and you got the action and the people dying,
and then the historical relevancy, all the old people.
Old people can be.
I haven't seen a single person die yet. It's a pretty bull crap.
And
I remember the propeller guy.
They missed a quadrant. Yeah, like, the propeller guy.
I thought that was the greatest moment in all cinema.
Yeah. It's like, oh, sick, dude. That was a sick shot.
I was like, how did they do that? Yeah, that movie was mind-blowing. Especially for what it is. Like, you wouldn't think that some high-budget super action, like, not super action film, but like one of the highest grossing films of all time that everyone wanted to see and it was so cool is about like a boat sinking. I remember when I first heard of it, I just didn't get it. I didn't see it until I was a lot older. Yeah. My parents wouldn't let me watch it.
Oh man. I don't want to go with just James Cameron films, but Avatar is absolutely
James Cameron is the mastermind.
He is. Like Terminator 2, Titanic.
He starts with the 4 quadrants and begins constructing a story within that diagram.
He is the master of that.
And that's where people critique him and say it's formulaic, it's predictable.
Because it is.
Yeah. Because it is, because he's giving everyone what they want.
But that's why he's like the highest grossing director of all time.
Totally, and he's only directed like 8 movies.
Yeah. It's because every film he makes so much hits the entire world population. Anyone can find something in it that they like.
Yeah, that's true.
That is the reason why he's so successful.
I'll tell you what, The Hobbit tried to be a 4-quadrant.
It did, and it fetching
talk about something that loses vision of what it is.
That's
The Hobbit right there. At the expense of their source material, they made it a 4-quadrant film, and it really did not help.
Yeah. Well.
Still haven't seen the third movie. Still not going to watch the third movie.
You don't want to watch Legolas like jump up falling rocks?
I will never watch
That
it.
was I forgot about that. That was the worst thing ever.
It's the worst. That is the worst.
That's the opposite
It
of
didn't even look
Propeller
good.
Gag.
The
Propeller Gag was
physics-
sick. That's not sick.
Oh, God.
Propeller
I
guy.
love this.
That's how you do it. Legolas. That's not how you do it.
Legolas is
not
that's
how
not
you
how
do
you do it.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
Anyways,
Good topic.
Paul Sampson. I haven't read up anything about Injustice 2. I'm sorry. I don't know much about. I hear people like it.
I'm not a big fighting game fan. It seems
we
to
don't
be
do that
that
as
people
much.
are enjoying it a lot, and I'm not sure how the RPG elements work.
Yeah, I
in it,
wish I was more familiar with that. But
but it's true of a lot of games. I mean,
Yeah.
like we're saying, most games
Any
do that
game,
now.
yeah.
So
it's tough when it's a competitive game and
yeah,
somebody was able to grind or I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they're not
Get the
doing it
golden
that
gun,
way. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
disadvantage to the other player. Well, that's like kind of what they'll do. At least I know in Injustice 2, they make it so that when you play online, you can play without all that stuff. You just play
So
the
it's like a
default
stock,
characters.
like
it's the same way they did.
it's like
in
doing
Smash
Arena
Brothers.
in Monster Hunter or something,
Yeah.
where you don't get to take your own stuff.
There's they do the same thing as Smash Brothers for where Wii U or whatever, where you can customize those characters and make them faster or whatever, so you can make your
Add the little things.
yeah, you can put the equipment on them and customize their abilities, or not abilities, but stats.
Yeah.
Actually, for the Mii characters,
Miis, you could
customize-
choose their
anyways.
abilities.
Oh yeah.
But you can always, when you're playing like the competitive mode online, you
They've
cannot
got to balance
use that.
it.
They don't-
You
Yeah,
cannot
yeah.
use that. You have to use the default character. The same thing with
Which
Injustice
made me not want to do any of that in my single player. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's like I don't want to use a character that
Get used to
is
how that
different
feels.
when you
Yeah.
play it
to
competitively.
play online.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, my
True.
guy's not fast enough. What
Yeah,
the
exactly. It's like what
Yeah.
the hell?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, Josh.
Jish.
asks which core gameplay elements make a game an RPG. Okay, we touched on this a little bit
Role-playing.
throughout, but we just break it down. What that means: role-playing game. What the genesis of this whole genre was: tabletop. Sit down. I customize my character's appearance, race, abilities, and stats, and then I sit down with my buddies, and we all assume that role. And when I speak, I'm speaking as if I'm that person. And you play the part of a character. That is what an RPG was. Is that what an RPG is today? Yes, and it's expanded widely beyond that. It's become a genre that is almost all-encompassing. It's like you could consider Horizon Zero Dawn an RPG. You could. I don't, but you could. I'm not. It's not wrong to assume that. You level up, you customize equipment and abilities, and like... Is that an RPG? You make choices sort of for that character. Not that they have any consequence, but you choose what she says and asks, and it's like it has all the same elements as something like The Witcher or Mass Effect. But why is it that I don't consider Horizon an RPG? I don't know. It's so you get so granular at that, like trying to separate
Because
why this
you're
is
almost
and
talking
this
about
isn't.
subgenres.
I know. So it's really hard to like really distinctly define this is an RPG and this is not, because like we've said, they've all sort of coalesced into one game anyways. But I think if we want to like honestly talk about it, like a role-playing game is a role-playing game. Am I playing a role of a character? Am I making choices? Am I customizing that character? Am I playing it the way that I see fit? Am I choosing where I go and what I do and in what order? All those things you could say you do in Horizon Zero Dawn, but I just don't know why I don't consider it an RPG.
Well, it's
I
like
don't know why.
what's alternative music, right? What the
Alternative.
hell's
Yeah.
alternative?
Yeah.
What is that genre?
Yeah, it's alternative.
Well, because there's different approaches to accomplishing like the same objective. Like the character progression can be handled so many different ways, or some games will take it to character creation, but some won't. And you know, it's I don't know. Like, what's weird is it has its roots kind of. It's almost an older video game genre than most other video game genres. When you really think about it, because it comes from a type of game that was really something you could play without a computer at all.
Yeah,
you can't play
predates-
Mario Brothers without a computer.
Yeah.
You can't play Legend of
shooters
Zelda. You
or-
can't.
yeah.
Yeah, you could make Final Fantasy work that way though. You
Yeah.
could. So it's weird because it's almost like the oldest genres, like going back to Pong or something. even farther back. What was the first tabletop RPG?
Oh, geez.
The first was Dungeons and Dragons really the first?
I don't know
or
if
were
it
they
was
playing
the
off of
very
something else?
first, but it was among the very first.
And they all have their roots
like
in
100 years
Tolkien
ago, right?
in a lot of ways. And so, because I know that there was an issue originally with them, someone was using, I think, the word Hobbit, and then they had to change it to Halfling or something.
Yeah.
But they were using Tolkien stuff.
Yeah.
like,
I think
straight
a
up.
lot of it was rooted in when Lord of the Rings became big in the 60s.
Like the 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
I know in the 80s was when people started freaking out about Dungeons and Dragons, like you were saying, the Satanic Panic.
Freaking evangelicals.
Yeah, it was a demonic thing.
I remember my mom telling me about that when I was a kid. I hadn't even heard of RPGs. I don't even know why she was talking about it. Like, she was like all panicked about how like it was freaking like satanic and stuff. And I was like, okay, I guess. And then I freaking like played one. I was like, that video. I'm sure everyone's seen it, but the one that's the 8-bit. What is it called?
8-bit theater.
8-bit theater, I think it is.
Oh, I know.
And it's all the guys sitting around like
Yeah.
playing a tabletop thing, and it's just like
That guy's
how
like getting
nerdy
food,
and
like,
stupid
shouting.
they are, and like
I
there's
know. It's
nothing
not,
satanic about it whatsoever. It's just mostly just awkward.
Well, it's crazy when you think about RPGs where like people wanted a game that was like this, where they could experience this thing, so they freaking made it.
Yeah.
They made it, right? It was like someone who wanted to own a lot of property and made Monopoly or something. Like, you know, like
I'll
they
be
made it,
honest.
even though they didn't have all the tools that
Or
were
Candyland.
Or Candy.
I'll be honest,
You want
like
some candy?
tabletop RPGs to me, like if you were to get like the family together and play Monopoly or like Sorry or some kind of board game, I'm not interested at all. It's just like, fine, I guess I'll do it because you guys are doing it. You need the right group of people, you really do, to play an RPG. But if you get the right people, man, it is so much fun. Like, it is so much better than getting around and like playing Uno or something. Like, there's tons of depth to it, and like you get to know the people around you because you're interacting in situations in ways that you wouldn't normally. And
It brings
like,
creativity in.
Yeah, it's like everyone's like pitching in, and it's like, wow, you learn something about the people you're with that you wouldn't just like playing some board game. And I think it can be an amazing social experience if people can get beyond the awkwardness of feeling insecure about acting.
Well, it's acting,
you know.
yeah.
So I loved the ones that I've done. I've done very few, but I just had the right group of guys, and it just was awesome. So, yeah.
I remember I was in 3rd grade and I was playing Mario RPG. I mean, I was in like 4th grade, and I can't actually remember. And I was talking to my teacher because we were supposed to write about something. I don't know, and I decided I'd write about RPGs because this new thing I'd discovered.
Yeah.
And I was telling her about what an RPG is because obviously she didn't know because she's my teacher and she just doesn't know things. And so she's like, what does it stand for? I was like, oh, it's a role-playing game. She's like, oh, and she then explained to me how, oh, you're playing a role. It's a game where you're playing a role. And I was like, no, it's where you have like turn-based and there's items and you can like attack. And I was like, that's what an RPG is. My teacher doesn't know anything. And it was like what she was telling me. It's just so funny. What RPGs were to me perceptually as a younger kid was, oh, whatever these video games told me, whatever the video game did.
Yeah,
you know, that is what an RPG is. It's freaking turn-based battle system. That's
a great
so I had
point.
to explain that to my teacher, and I don't remember exactly how it happened. I think she told me what it was, and I was like, adults just freaking don't get it. And I was pretty sure that was my response. But I just like shut down. I was like, okay, whatever. She doesn't know what an RPG is.
That's such a great point because like what someone's first experience with a genre or a piece of media or whatever really colors what you think that thing is moving forward.
Yeah,
for
totally.
sure. So getting into people talking about the WRPG or the JRPG,
what is it?
Yeah, like what people prefer. Or people want the turn-based. These people don't want the turn-based. You know, like it kind of has a lot to do with where you came from.
Yeah, totally.
Start playing first. We're part of that generation that was young when the first video game RPGs came out, but those were all directly based off of the tabletop stuff. Like that's what they were drawing from, and so we kind of missed that, I guess. In some way, it was still around, but we didn't. I didn't play anything like that until I was, in my 20s. so didn't grow
Yeah.
up with that, right? But just got used to. So now I look at tabletop stuff in video game RPG terms, to be honest. Like, oh yeah, like you
like in
stats
Final
and
Fantasy.
you got your character sheet.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's funny. It's hard to define, but
Yep. Well, that's a good one.
It is
Josh.
whatever you think it is.
yeah.
Whatever you think an RPG is, that's what it is, man. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, everybody.
We're done.
If
finished.
you're listening audio only, you can find us on YouTube at Dark Pixel Gaming for game analysis and at Dark Pixel for filmmaking and visual effects. Appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate your feedback. Still getting like home studios set up and stuff like that, but some exciting stuff is in the pipeline. It's coming soon. Really cool videos. So stay tuned for Monday. Monday we'll have a cool video up. Until then, have a great week and weekend, and we'll see you again soon.